Ladies and gentlemen, I am Teemu Ainasoja and I come from Voyantic company. In this presentation I will discuss about RAIN RFID systems in hospital environment and especially what it means when multiple systems are operating in parallel in same location. I will discuss the different applications used in hospitals and different types of items that are being tagged. I will also describe some tools and methods and practices that can be used for assuring that multiple systems would work well in parallel. And at the end, I will say just a couple of words about Voyantic. Now, why is this topic relevant at the moment? Well, RAIN RFID use started to boom several years ago in retail. And now we are seeing similar boom in healthcare. New applications and case studies are being published all the time. One good source to learn about these applications is RAIN RFID website and healthcare market page there. When you go to the site, look for this picture and click it. It will get you to a link list with plenty of articles about RAIN RFID in healthcare. And more is being published as we speak. These case studies prove that RAIN RFID has clear benefits. It improves efficiency, it reduces waste, and it brings many other benefits. Ultimately, it's all about providing better care. I won't go through any single case study or application in details, but I will describe the RAIN RFID use in hospitals in general. And there are several applications. First, from RAIN RFID point of view, hospital pharmacies are actually quite similar to retail store. RAIN RFID is used to manage inventory counting, receiving goods, locating items, managing first in, first out sequences to reduce waste, and so on. But RAIN RFID in hospitals is a lot more than medicine supply chain. Medicines are further tracked when they move from pharmacy to patient care. The storage conditions are monitored, that is for maintaining efficacy, and right medicine needs to be given to right patient in right doses at right times. There may be handling limitations. Only certain persons may be authorized to handle the medication, and in some cases detailed records of all activities has to be recorded. RAIN is not limited to medication only. Also, patients are tracked and identified. Who is he? Is he in the right place? Is the scheduled operations for this patient? There are stories about operating a wrong patient or removing a wrong kidney, and I don't think they all are just urban legends. Also, tracking these activities makes invoicing easier, wherever that is applicable. RAIN helps in creating automatically lists of what was done, what materials were used, whose time was spent in treatment, and so on. Hospitals have also plenty of valuable assets. So, what they are and where they are is an interesting from accounting point of view, but also from a practical point of view. For example, if seldomly needed but critical equipment location would always be known, and that is exactly what RAIN RFID does, there would be less need for expensive spare equipment. And with some equipment, it is not just about what it is and where it is, but also about tracking status. A simple example is about hospital beds. Is the empty bed at the corridor free to be used? Is it reserved? Or is it waiting to be picked up for sanitation? RAIN RFID is a perfect technology to answer these questions. I mentioned earlier patient tracking. Some hospitals also track doctors and nurses. These caregivers can have unique or rare skills, and sometimes it is important to quickly find an individual. There are also more specific applications related to tracking caregivers. An example would be monitoring hand washing. An application where the bathroom door only gives green light if the person stands at the front of the hand wash basin long enough and presses soap dispenser button. Yet another application example. There is plenty of documentation at the hospital. Patient records must be found quickly when needed, and they must be reliably matched with right patients. Document tracking systems are one natural RAIN RFID use case at the hospitals. And then there is plenty of consumables. These need to be available not just at the storage room, but at each location, at the time when they are needed. And in some cases, their use would even be invoiced, so the consumption should be connected to a patient and to an activity. All of these applications, and there is more than the ones I described, they use RAIN RFID readers. Some of them use handhelds, some of them use gate readers in relevant choke points like doorways and corridors. Some may have fixed ceiling mount readers monitoring certain area more in details. And there are plenty of fixed readers embedded in equipment. For example, monitoring that only correct type of consumables is used when the equipment is used for safety of the equipment and for safety of the patient. And of course, these applications require a lot of RAIN RFID tags. There are tags on items such as medicine packages. There are tags on all kinds of consumables that are used in hospitals. Masks, for example, come to my mind for some reason. Patients are usually tracked with wristbands. Staff is usually tracked with ID cards that are RAIN RFID enabled. There are hard tags or labels on assets. And the assets can be anything from medical electronic devices to IT equipment to even office furniture and carpets. Some may be hospital owned and some may be owned by a third-party service providers. There are tags on documents, there are tags on medical laboratory samples and vials. And at the hospital, there are also tags that are not used at the hospitals. They can be embedded to patients or employees' clothes, for example. When the RAIN RFID use becomes more common in general, these other tags will be seen more and more. So, in a hospital, there can be plenty of tags and readers used in several applications. Why it matters? Easiest way to start thinking this by comparing RAIN RFID to barcodes. Many of you have seen similar things, but let me show anyway what I mean. In the first video, there are 9 barcode labels on a wall. Reader is pointing to the one in the middle, and when the scan button is pressed, the code is read. With the barcode, line of sight is needed, so codes are read one at a time and reader can aim to the target code. Now, same with RFID. There are 9 RFID labels on a wall. Reader is pointing to the middle one, and when the scan button is pressed, as you probably guess, we are not reading just one tag in the middle of the 9, but we are reading immediately more than 50 tags, even though there was just 9 on the wall. So, what is going on? With barcode, line of sight is needed, codes are read one at a time, and reader can aim to the target code. With RAIN RFID, reader creates a read area, a sort of a bubble around the antenna, and it reads the tags from inside that bubble. If there is a wall in between, it still reads the tags also from behind the wall. So, in the video example, that is most likely what happened. Even if there was just 9 tags on the wall, somewhere nearby, maybe behind the wall, there were more tags. Now, I'm simplifying a bit, but you can also think that each tag has a bubble around it. The tag can only be read if the reader is inside the tags bubble. In practice, the reader reads the tags when tags and readers are inside each other's reading bubbles. There are so many tag designs because the size and shape of these reading bubbles depend on the tag's antenna design. Different tags are designed for different use cases, which require different shape and size reading bubbles. Now, if we consider this in the hospital environment, it is easy to see how things could go wrong. For example, a nurse is trying to read patient's wristband and medicine package label for checking that right patient is getting the right medication. If Instead of reading just these two tags, the system reads wristband of every patient in the room and every medicine package in the room, as well as hundreds of tags in assets, documents, consumables, ID cards, sports shoes, and so on. The system doesn't really help in ensuring that the right patient gets the right medication. When the RAIN RFID systems are built, it is not enough to look at each system in isolation. It must be taken into account that in the same location there would be other systems operating in parallel. Good news is that there are ways to do this. So here are some of the methods. First one is about multiple readers operating close to each other. RAIN RFID readers have inbuilt sort of a sixth sense. The readers can sense when there are other readers around, and they automatically adapt the way they operate. These frequency hopping and listen before talk settings depend on the geographical area where the readers are operating, and typically manufacturers would have them enabled by default. So readers work if you just keep the default frequency hopping and listen before talk settings enabled. Then some methods that actually need a bit more work. Not a lot, but a bit. RAIN RFID signals go through materials and walls, but not through any material. Metal stops the signal. It sneaks through narrow slits, but not through solid metal or mesh with small enough holes. So it is possible to isolate reading zones physically using shielding materials. At our website, there is a blog article describing material from Avery Dennison and some test methods that can be used for checking how well the zoning works. In some cases, it is possible to create isolated reader zones just with reader settings. It is possible to adjust the reader power, which makes the reading bubble smaller. This is a common practice with gate readers. Power is set to a level which enables reading at the gate area, but not from further away. Another good method is to adjust reading angles of fixed readers. The reading bubbles are not perfectly round but typically ovals. By adjusting the angles, it is possible to steer the reading bubble away from the area where reading is to be avoided. As I mentioned earlier, also tags have their reading bubbles. By selecting suitable performance tags to each application, it is possible to assure reliable reading when needed and at the same time avoid unwanted stray readings. Also, tag quality has an effect. If the quality varies, in practice that means that the size of the reading bubble varies even within one tag model. Then designing a reliable system would be difficult. Consistent quality makes everything easier. And first step towards consistent quality is to specify the quality when the tags are selected and bought. One possible method is called RSSI filtering. The further away a tag is from the reader, the weaker signal the reader receives, and reader recognizes the strength of the signal. RSSI filtering is a method where the reader is set to ignore too weak whispers from the tag or too loud shouts from the tag. Much like voice levels in discussions, this is not a foolproof method. Tag design, tag quality, and the surroundings have also an effect on how strong signal is available for the reader. Reader only knows the strength of the signals, not really how far the tag is. Even if the signal goes through walls and materials, it still can get weaker, and reflections and RF noise have an effect. In noisy environment, it is harder to hear even loud signals, and they may be accidentally filtered out. Still, RSSI filtering is definitely one method to be considered. In a lot of places, it would work. Next method is to use the actual code in the tag in filtering out unwanted tag responses. This is again a simplification, but RFID numbering standards such as GS1 EPC tag data standard have following structure. Beginning of the code tells which standard the coding follows, next part tells which type of code is in question, and last parts describe the type of item, and finally there is the individual code of each item. For example, the right medicine to right patient application could be set first to read patient wristband codes from just short proximity, such as 1 inch, and ignore any other tag. And at the next step, it would read medicine package tag, possibly from a bit longer range, and ignore any asset tag, document tag, and so on. Using standard numbering and using code filtering would ensure that applications work even when there are plenty of different tags around. Code filtering can be taken down to individual tag. So, for example, if we need to find a certain person, the system can be set to find tags with code pointing to service provider ID card of the hospital in question and ignore any other tag than the one ID we need to find. So, if I summarize, RAIN RFID works perfectly in hospitals when it is done correctly. You should use standard numbering systems. If every system just starts numbering tags from 001, 002, 003 and so on, there would be problems. So use standard numbering and use code filtering. Next, don't disable the reader's sixth sense. Sixth sense is very useful when you have it and brain readers have it. Consider using RSSI filtering. Think about which applications would benefit from it. Use physical shielding when applicable. It cannot be used everywhere, but it definitely has its applications. Adjust and optimize reader power. Maximum power is rarely the best solution. Consider fixed antenna locations and the installation angles. How should the reader's reading bubble be pointed? Select right tag to each application. And specify the tag quality. It has an effect on how reliably the system works. What has Voyantic to do with this? Well, at Voyantic, we make testing and encoding systems for RFID and NFC industries. So we help companies to excel in RFID. And we help by making tools with which the technology providers, system integrators, and users can make sure that their tags, readers, and systems work in the best possible way. As we discussed, RAIN RFID signals are invisible to human eye, and that is why many of the features I discussed are hard to see. Even some of the simple sounding questions can be hard to answer without the visibility. Shortly, Voyantic systems bring visibility to the RFID, and they help in getting the systems right. We are a very niche company specializing in RFID testing and encoding tools, but in that niche we are strong. And we strongly believe that we can help RAIN RFID technology and RAIN RFID users a lot. As a final note, at our website we have a blog. It has plenty of articles, some technical, some not so technical, but definitely useful for anyone working on RFID. Please have a look on these articles. We also have booth in the event. Myself or one of my colleagues will be at the booth during opening hours, so we can discuss more there. I believe we have time for a couple of questions, so let's have the first question.